All right, it's time to talk about the new movie, Planet of the Humans, the one made by Michael Moore. Well, not really. He's the executive producer. It was written and directed by Thanos or Jeff Gibbs. I can't remember, one of the two. They're ranted about depopulation the whole time. So that's one of the problems with this movie is the central thesis, I think, is wrong on the depopulation thing, but it does do a great job sort of exposing the hypocrisy of the green energy movement. Not a lot of people know this, but the original title for this movie was actually going to be, Daniel was right about everything he said in the last 10 years about the energy movement or green energy movement, but they had to shorten it to make it more pizzazz and snappy. But at the end, I'll talk about the actual flaws with this movie from a conservative perspective and the fact that the guy who made it clearly has never spoken to a conservative in his life. But let's get in the good and what it really shows. So the green energy movement, and what I've been saying for a long time, is it's not green. It's not good for the environment. It's bad for the environment. Now, he does a great job of showing that all green energy is essentially fossil fuels. It's all backed up by the fossil fuels, right? In the article I wrote years ago, I was saying, like, okay, and they brought this up, and I'm so glad they brought this up, especially with wind. I want to destroy every single wind farm in the world to save the planet. The problem is, you actually increase fossil fuel emissions. You increase the carbon footprint when you go to these wind and solar plants. And now, in Ontario, it's a lot worse because we overregulated the grid, but the essential thing is, when you have wind going, and you have solar going, okay, let's say you have wind and solar supplementing. Now, sometimes it's not going to make enough energy because you'll hit either a condition where it's not sunny enough or not windy enough. Now, not a lot of people know this, but there's this thing called nighttime. And almost every day, I'm pretty sure, I've been monitoring for the last week, but every day at what is called night, the sun actually goes down and isn't there. And then there's no sun for this in hours prolonged period. And I also went outside sometimes, and it's not actually 100% windy all the time, which means you will need to supplement these grids with something else that is consistent. Now, the thing with fossil fuels here, what is most efficient and what uses the least energy is the most efficient. So energy usage and efficiency are essentially the same thing. If I want to drive from Toronto to Vancouver, all right, or anywhere to anywhere, if you want to drive anywhere, the fastest way to get there, straight line, right? Now, the most energy efficient way to get there in a car is actually cruise control, because you use the exact same amount of energy all the time. You'll find, and they've done studies on this, if you go cruise control from point A to point B, right, that's actually the most energy efficient. You use the least amount of gas because it's consistent rate. You don't have to starting your car uses a lot of to get started, to ramp down, to ramp up. This is actually where you use the most amount of fuel. And because we have these stupid wind farms and solar farms, actually, because they go up and down in production, the constant changes in the fossil fuel plants to go up, to go down, to go up, to go down, to shift to need. Instead, if you just get rid of the wind and solar, you just have it going sort of straight like that. You say, okay, we need to produce X amount of kilowatt hours for this amount of time, right? That's the most efficient. That uses the least amount of energy. That's the best. That's the greenest way of doing things. However, if you add wind farms, one, how do you make the wind farms? They only last 10 to 20 years. You have to clear the ground to do it. Everything to create a wind farm is fossil fuels. To maintain it is fossil fuels. So we can't even store it. In Ontario, every kilowatt hour of energy produced from these stupid wind farms, it had to be stored, and to store it, I mean, there's other problems I go into, but in order to store it, you need 1 kilowatt hour of energy from natural gas produced. So the windmills in Ontario, they're fracking. They're fracking mills. They're vanity fracking mills. So I have said, and my central thesis that conflicts with this movie is the reason why we have green energy is because it makes people feel good. And I say people prioritize thinking that they're doing something good over doing something good. So we like to think we're being environmentally friendly. This is the green energy movement. This is recycling. Than actually doing something that is good for the environment. Like we want to, our priority is feeling good. And because recycling and green energy sound good, this is why they've survived, because they sound good. Now, the thesis and what he brings up in the movie is actually, no, it's capitalism. And this is where we get into the flaws in the movie, where it's just, we need to depopulate the earth. Okay, no, but that's another video. But you could tell he's never spoken to a conservative. He has no conservative friends. He has no conservative, he doesn't follow me on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or anything. Because this is not capitalism. This is actually a problem with increased government. And any conservative, if you watch this movie, and I suggest you watch it, you will find that the actual problem here is government subsidies. So because governments are subsidizing these green energy projects, that actually creates them, wills them into existence, and they survive out the subsidies, and then all the leeches come. Then major corporations come in and they can lobby for these government subsidies. The real problem is the government is picking winners and losers here. If there was no subsidies, these biomass things, these stupid wind farms, these solar energy plants, they wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't be destroying the environment. Now, there was one thing I realized I've been wrong about saying is, I've been saying for a while, and this needs to be re-explained, but if you've followed me when I've talked about energy before, I say this a lot. I've been saying there are two ways to kill coal plants. One, do nothing and let the market take care of it, because natural gas is here, and natural gas is better than coal in every metric. So we talk about efficiency and waste and carbon emissions. It's all kind of the same thing. Second law of thermodynamics. You can't transfer energy from one place to the next without a loss in energy. Now, coal loses a lot more energy. It's less clean, less efficient than oil. So when we found oil around World War II, World War I, a lot of Second World War was like to get into the oil fields. Like it was this new resource that was cleaner than coal, more powerful than coal. Because I'm just going to throw some random numbers out here. They're not real numbers. Let's say coal is 40% efficient, which means you burn coal. Right, you get the energy out of it. 40% of that becomes energy, kinetic energy, electricity used, and then 60% of that is waste. So that's also called carbon emissions, waste, inefficiency, whatever you want to call it. Right, then that 60% becomes pollution. Well, then we found oil, which let's say was 75% efficient. Well, hold on, that you'd much rather use that because one, if you look at it a greed capitalist way, would you rather burn a source that you get 75% use of or 40% use of? Right? If you go the pure greed route, well, you want the 75% because if you get it, you get 75% that turns into profit. Only 25% of that is waste. And if you go from the green thing, you want less emissions, right? So we're all talking about the same thing here. Then we found natural gas, which is like 99% efficient. Right? Natural gas is even better than oil. Like natural gas is to oil what oil was to coal. So coal plants will go extinct if we do nothing because it will become infeasible to use coal because no one would use coal. They'd use natural gas because it makes so much more money. It's less expensive to mine. You get more profit out of it. It's cleaner. Like there is no reason to use coal over natural gas. And I was saying the other way to get rid of coal is to regulate it out of the economy and attack coal and you can do all that. However, what I've found, what this movie actually taught me and what I did learn from this movie, it wasn't just I was right. The green energy industry is actually keeping coal alive. Because one, all these green energy plants, all of them are subsidized by fossil fuel plants, which is either natural gas or coal. But actually coal is a key ingredient in a lot of the green energy technology needs coal actually to exist. So the number one demand for coal is actually for the green energy plants. So if you want to kill coal, you got to get rid of these green energy subsidies. Oh my God, Elizabeth May's head's going to explode. I love this. So that I was wrong about. There's only one way to get rid of coal, and the only way to get rid of coal is to end green energy subsidies, to take the government out of the marketplace. So, this is not government subsidies to picking winners and losers, government injecting money into the economy. That's the opposite of capitalism. Yes, billionaires and bankers will take advantage of this, but billionaires getting rich is not capitalism. Right? That's crony capitalism. That's corporatism. Like no one really advocates for that. And this is what drives conservatives up the wall because someone's like, "Oh, billionaires hate the planet." Like it's Bernie Sanders logic. Like billionaires are evil, and they're doing this. Like no, you're throwing these massive government subsidy piles, and then of course the people with the money to lobby for it will money and lobby for it, and the corporations get it. And what we really should is not have the government be picking winners and losers, subsidizing markets. This is what happens, right? So clearly he's never met a conservative before in his life. He wants to go with the depopulation thing, but all in all, this actually is a good movie. The first 45 minutes you should watch. Then he gets onto his depopulation thing. Then it gets a bit redundant, but it's pretty thorough. I will say he goes over this technology. He asks the green person like, okay, where's this energy coming from? They're like, where? Green, coal, where? Natural gas. So it's over and over and over. It exposes biomass, which is just like we're burning trees instead of fossil fuels. I mean, what I've said for a while, like the real solution here, the real environmental thing is like it's what we do in Canada. That's why we should be using Canadian fossil fuels over Saudi things. Is put in a law that we have in Canada. If you mine this ground, if you frack this ground, if you use this ground, you got to restore it to what it was before. I'm okay with reasonable environmental regulations to put the burden on the company to bioremediate the land after they use it. I'm fine with that. Don't just pollute and walk away. Capitalism. No. Social responsibility. I'm okay with that. And then you see the problem is when the Trudeau government has been attacking our oil industries, we've had this major orphan well problem because these companies that are supposed to be cleaning up after themselves because of Trudeau's new regulations and the green energy push, well, all these companies are going out of business and going bankrupt that they don't have the money to then clean up the sites they left behind. So they're just abandoned. It's called these orphan wells. And now we're pumping government subsidies in to clean them up. But I mean, this should have been the responsibility of the corporation. So again, we'd be saving money and we'd be cleaning the environment, and the corporations would be cleaning the environment for us if we just had left them alone in the first place. So it's a great movie to watch if you're skeptical about the environmental movement, but you don't have all the facts, because it really does show just how corrupt, illogical, and basically feelings-based. So my thing is, the green energy movement has always subsisted on sort of emotional validation of people. No one really wants to look into it. I mean, if they had watching me, I've been saying this for years. I can't wait for someone makes the recycling is bad for the environment movie. I'm so excited for that. But my real thing is people want to feel good about what they're doing. They want to feel like they're doing something good for the environment. They don't actually really want to do something good for the environment. The feeling good is the major priority. And green sounds good and recycling sounds good, which is why these things survive. But in actual fact, what we need to be doing is thinking about what's the most environmentally friendly solution. And you don't like that, but it's deregulating. It's embracing new technologies. It's the push for non-government interfered in. It's real innovation, taking the government out of things. It's real capitalism. Like capitalism, as you see, is actually going to be the solution here. Not corporatism, not government subsidy nonsense to Bloomberg or whatever. But the answer here is real conservatism. So that's what this movie really lacks, is its solution is, well, depopulate the world. There's too many humans. Humans are bad. We're all evil. And as the fucking sad music at the beginning and the end that just is annoying. But the real solution here is actually true conservatism. So I would love to have a conversation. I do know some environmentalists who are on the left, where I think if we can just now kind of have a bit of a talk with each other, I think it could do a lot of good. So all in all, this movie gets 10 out of 10 on the Daniel was right all along scale. 5 out of 10 for its thesis, and it's worth watching and tweeting at Elizabeth May. I will say that.